Hello, everyone. Hello, dear viewers. Welcome to our online open day session that is named the new program Alert. And I would like to introduce our speakers. So, today we are going to present you all our new programs, to introduce you the programs, and we are going to have different representatives, professors of our schools that will help me to introduce, to show you which kind of programs Nazarbayev University is opening for now. So, welcome to our session. And today, first of all, we are going to start with the program of the Global Affairs and Eurasian Studies of SOAS University joint program, SOAS University in London. So, and first of all, our speaker will be Maya Sadevska. This is our assistant professor of the Graduate School of Business. So, and also we are going to have our next speaker Bafna Dave, and she's going to speak online from London. So Bafna Dave is a senior lecturer in politics and of Central Asia in SOAS University in London, and we are going to start with our questions. So hi Maya.
Hi,
How are you?
Monica. Yeah, thank you for the introduction.
Yeah, could you please shortly introduce, your role in this program, of this program with South University?
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon to all the viewers who are signing in as we speak. So, welcome to our podcast that kickstarts a series of podcasts about introducing new programs at Nazarbayev University. I want to greet you from Astana. We have another beautiful day in the capital of Kazakhstan. Greetings for everybody who's signing in from different parts of the world. I want to thank Malika for inviting me to this podcast, and I'm really honored to be introducing to you a newly developed joint degree, a true joint degree between Nazarbayev University and SOAS University of London. And I want to have just small correction. I am not at the Graduate School of Business, but at the School of Sciences and Humanities. And no problem. Yeah, there are a lot of schools.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a lot of schools thrown at you today, but don't get confused. I'm at the Department of Political Science and International Relations. And today we're going to talk about the newly launched joint degree master program in Global Affairs and Eurasian Studies, and I'm the newly appointed program director on the side of Nazarbayev University. And Bhavna would be talking from London today, and she's the program director from the SOAS side of this joint degree, which is a new territory for us at Nazarbayev University. We are starting to take our first steps in the practice of joint degrees, which are already very popular globally, where we can pool the talent and the resources of two great institutions and offer to students a unique design programs that hopefully fill in a market gap.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Yeah, sorry. We have a lot of, so we are going to have here Graduate School of Business, as I mentioned. So we have the School of Science and Humanities. Yes, that provides this Masters of like MA in like joint program with SOAS University in London. So thank you so much, dear Maya. And now we're switching to the next question. Could you tell us about the vision behind this MA program?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to start talking about where the need of this program came from. And so it has been in the planning for many years now. And I have to thank former colleague Jean-Francois Caron for his contribution to jumpstarting this program. And I want to now talk about what is the core vision of this program. So basically, this program is designed to respond to a clear gap in how we study global affairs. A lot of the current educational programs tend to focus on the great power dynamics while ignoring the rising middle powers. Mm-hmm. And this MA starts from a very different premise. We are actually placing Eurasia at the center of global transformations. So the program has two components, as you know in the title. We have global affairs and Eurasian studies. And we start from one core premise. The core premise is that the global system is undergoing really fundamental transformations. So we are seeing major shift in the way the international system is structured. And we are, as such, in our discipline, we're studying not a stable system, but a system that is in transition. And there is no better time to be studying global affairs than today, because the rules of this system are rewritten in real time as we speak. So the global affairs component of the master program tries to address that directly. We focus on the rules, institutions, and practices of international affairs that have governed, let's say, the liberal international order for a long time, that is being contested and transformed today. So we are seeing weakening of multilateralism, we are seeing geopolitical rivalry, we're seeing emergence of more fragmented, what we call multipolar world. So I think it's great time for students to be studying global affairs. But at the same time, in our program, we also want to train students to think globally, but from a regional perspective, from Eurasian perspective. This is a region that is shaping this global transformation. It's a region that has a lot of actorness in itself when it comes to this transformation. So we see it as a region where this transformation are visible, and we want to put it at the center of our analysis in this program. And in doing so, we're filling up a gap that a lot of educational institutions don't offer such programs. And we think that a lot of students who have interest in both global affairs and Eurasia are going to be perfect candidates for this program.
Thank you so much, Maya. You have covered my second question, why it's important for the Eurasian studies and global affairs. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's really important. Eurasia is really kind of as a region at intersection of global and economic transformation and technological transformation, and it sits literally. It's as a region is central to energy markets. It's central to the trade corridors that are being reconfigured, and it's also central to the green transition. So if you allow me 1 minute, I want to talk about each. If we take the trade corridors, we see that global trade corridors are being reconstructed and rewired now, and Central Asia is at the center of it. So probably we all have heard about the Trans-Caspian middle corridor, the corridor that connects Asia to Europe, and we see increasing amount of investment being pumped into this corridor. Moreover, the cargo volume in this corridor has quadrupled from 2022 after the war in Ukraine. So we see from 2022 to today, the volume has quadrupled. Projections are that we will see even further increase. Then we have overall a region where we see a lot of investment pour into the region. So we are attracting large scale of investment, not only from the China Belt and Road Initiative that has mobilized billions of dollars in the region, but also from Europe that is increasingly competing in this space. And Europe, through its own instrument, it's called the Global Gateway Initiative, which has something like 300 billion euros dedicated to investment. Some of it, around 12 billion, would go just along to Central Asia, and it's about investments in building connectivity of this region. And then finally, not least important, is that Eurasia sits at the center of central importance to the energy transition, because it contains a lot of resources that are needed for this energy transition. So probably you have heard about this, that the new oil of the 21st century is the critical raw minerals. It's not anymore oil, and Central Asia has a lot of them. And we're not only talking about uranium, which Kazakhstan already controls a great deal of the market for uranium, more than 40% of the global export markets for uranium, but we're talking about around 35 critical raw minerals, from lithium to tungsten, which is important for the defense industry, to cobalt, which is important for the AI industry. So we're talking about critical raw minerals that are found all over Central Asia. So we see a lot of investment pour in this region, in this sector. And we're going to see probably a lot of investment in production, not only in extraction of this material, but in processing and production. So yeah, it's very important to study this order.
Okay, thank you so much. And dear viewers who just joined us, I wanted to mention that we are presenting our new programs of Nazarbayev University, and now we are together with the speaker representative of the School of Science and Humanities, and we are speaking about the MA in the Global Affairs and Eurasian Studies. So, and this is, I just would like to mention that this is the only program at Nazarbayev University that's only like the duration is 1 year. semester only. Yes. So one semester you can study in London. The second semester you study at Nazarbayev University. So, and I have the next question regarding the what are the core topics and theme covered in the curriculum.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Malika. Indeed, again, welcome to the viewers who are just chiming in. So we're talking about the newly launched MA in global study and in global affairs and Eurasian studies, which is a joint degree, and it's truly joint degree because students get to spend a semester in London at SOAS University and a semester in Astana at Nazarbayev University. And the curriculum is structured in such a way to give students both strong theoretical foundation in global affairs, but also regional expertise in Eurasia. So we have what are the core themes and topics covered in this master degree, 1 year only. First of all, you can take a lot of classes depending on your choice that would allow you to get a strong theoretical foundation. Classes like core international relations theory, international law, classes studying the United Nations system. But on top of that, you also have a large selection of elective courses that would regional expertise in. So you will be studying politics and governance issue of Central Asia, Russia, China, the Caucasus, and also you can take classes that focus on security, international security dynamics, or international political economy dynamics. So we really have amazing selection of courses for you, depending on your specific interests within the area of study. But on top of that, the third component of the program is the internship component. So you will have a chance to kind of complete an internship in international organization, maybe an NGO or other entity where you would be asked to apply your knowledge to a real world problem. And finally, the master culminates with supervised dissertation, where you would apply your theoretical knowledge to a real world problem. So we have everything from theory to regional expertise to practice. So we're trying to capture all of that within 1 year to give you a high chance of success on the labor market.
Wow, very useful information. I just have one question. You have mentioned about the internship. I just wanted to ask whether they can have a chance to have the internship in London, or they having like the internship here. They pass.
So I think that the way we are structuring the program now is that the internship would take place in Astana, which I think is a really great opportunity for students to seek a lot of internship opportunities within Astana or Almaty, so it can be within the region. But for now, this is the plan of the program.
Okay. Yeah, very nice. Thank you. But they work anywhere in international companies, right? Globally. Yes. So the next question is, thank you so much. What international perspectives do students gain?
Yeah. So basically, students are not only studying global affairs. Students are actually living global affairs from a two very different vantage point. How is that so? Well, this is a joint degree that allows you to get a dual geographical perspective. You're spending a semester in London, and London is an established financial hub. Yeah, it's a financial policy hub, and when I say an established policy hub, I really mean it's not only the legacy of the 19th century that it was big back in the days, but it is today the place where let's say 40% of the foreign exchange turnover market is cleared. So this is a market of, let's say, $7 to $9 trillion of daily turnover. Now 40% of that market is cleared in London. London plays a central role in all financial industries, and students would get a chance to be in that center, and also then come and be in Astana, which is a regional center of its own kind. Astana is really a aspiring regional hub, and it sits really at the intersection of Eurasia, where a lot of this connectivity and trade corridors are being rewritten, where we have the emergence of a truly regional financial system, the Astana International Financial Center. So it's really an important ongoing transformation within the region are taking place in Astana. So it's really interesting for students to come and see how is life in established financial center, how is a life in Astana as a regional hub. And they get that perspective, which is really unique. And then there are many ways throughout the whole program, where we try to teach them and give them very unique international perspective. For example, one of my favorite aspects of this program is because when we are studying global affairs and the fragmentation of the system that we are currently witnessing in real time, we are stressing and putting an emphasis on role of the middle powers in doing that. And middle powers are not just some actors to whom these changes are happening. They're active players who are reconfiguring the system. And we see that from the major players in Kazakhstan. Like we see Tokayev active role internationally in calling for reforms of the UN system, of the importance of preserving the multilateral nature of international cooperation. So we see active role of many Central Asian states. So it's really good to have this program at this time.
Yeah, thank you so much, dear Professor Maya. I think everything was very useful and helpful. This information is really open and full, and thank you so much for answering my questions. Dear viewers, if you have any questions to our Assistant Professor of School Science and Humanities, Maya Savevska, you can put your question to the chat box, and after that, I will read all the questions. And now we are going to have our next speaker, representative of SOAS University in London. So we have Bhavna Dave, senior lecturer in politics of Central Asia in SOAS University in London. So Bhavna, can you hear us?
Hello. Yes. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, I think we can hear you. Thank you so much, Bhavna. You can shortly introduce your role in the SOAS University in London, and after that, I will ask you the questions.
Okay. Thank you, Ainash and Maya. So I'm Bhavna Dave. I teach in the Politics and International Relations Department at SOAS, University of London. And I have been working on Kazakhstan and Central Asia for many, many years. Actually, the last century, the late 90s, is when I started traveling to the region and studying Kazakh, and already knew Russian. So for me personally, this is also in a sense a culmination of what I have been studying, doing research on, and now a chance to be engaged in this partnership and engage with the upcoming generation of students, also colleagues at Nazarbayev University. So I'll just say a little bit about my research, my topics I work on, and how that also connects with this degree. Kazakhstan is the primary country I work on, and in recent years, I've been focusing broadly on the geopolitics of the Eurasian region. So as Maya already articulated, how Central Asia, Eurasia is becoming so central to global politics today, given the role of energy, resources, transition to green energy, the middle corridor, the rise of middle power, so Kazakhstan, and then subsequently Uzbekistan, and we also have Azerbaijan, which is very engaged in the region. And then we have the major regional, global powers, which are active in the region, along with other regional powers. So the metaphor of the centrality of Central Asia comes to mind. This is a metaphor used, a title of a very well-known article by geographer Andre Günther Frank, who is very well-known in writes from the world system theory perspective, and talks about the civilizational, cultural, economic centrality of Central Asia since the Silk Road years, and how Central Asia is very central to Silk Road. So all these ideas of the Silk Road of the medieval times, Central Asia, Eurasia, middle power, the current middle corridor, we see how all these ideas are so much interlinked. So there's a huge historical context to it. There is also the contemporary developments. So these are the various things that come together in this degree program. And just to repeat what Maya said, some of the distinctive, unique elements of this degree is that we are looking at Eurasia from the perspective of a Eurasian country, which is Kazakhstan. Eurasianism also has, when I say perspective, sorry, what I meant is the geographical location, yeah, Kazakhstan. So Kazakhstan as emblematic of the entire Central Asian, Eurasian region. And also the word Eurasia has so many different definitions and interpretations today. So when we are talking about Eurasia, Eurasian studies, we are talking about the academic perspective, the discipline, and the geographical area. There are some other ideological interpretations of Eurasianism to be found elsewhere, but that's not what we focus on. But this degree also makes you aware of these subtle differences and terminology and the contexts. So I would just conclude by highlighting that SOAS and Nazarbayev University already bring in their own very distinctive profile, their own distinctive experience in this degree program. I have been working along with my colleague Matt Nelson, who is the head of the politics department. So both of us have been engaged over the last 15 months or so, together with Jean-François Caron, who has now handed over the role to Maya Saevska. We have been working together to formulate the curriculum, to establish common ground, synergy, complementarity in this program. So there's been a lot of work involved in creating this, but it also gives us satisfaction finally to see that this degree program has been launched. And we also have a good number of students who have already applied and have been admitted, and still much larger number who are looking into it, who are curious about it, and who will certainly have many questions. So I will stop with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear Bhavna. Actually, you have covered my first question. Thank you so much about the the role of this collaboration with South University and how it enriched this program. And so let me ask the next questions. What sectors or roles are graduates typically prepared for, and how to apply to this program?
Yes, I mean, this program will give the graduates of this program grounding in global affairs, international understanding of theories and concepts of international relations, how international organizations operate. So we also have a module on the UN, its history and future, and how international law operates. So these are the very cornerstones of gaining an understanding of the international system. So it's not there's a lot of politics, current events that we all follow, right? But these give you the conceptual basis to understand these concepts and how they operate in a variety of settings. Secondly, also students are learning about these concepts as they are understood, and sorry, in the particular role of SOAS as a very distinctive, distinguished institutions that is that articulates the perspective of the global South. So learning about international relations, theories, concepts, the entire knowledge production in social sciences from a much broader perspective and not a limited Western-centric perspective. So that is also a very key element here. So graduates of this program will be equipped with a much more global and much more broader, wider understanding of international system, and also recognize the biases that are inherent in in international law, functioning of organizations, and bring in and understand these and work to transform the system by bringing in a much wider, different perspective. So, in terms of the job options, the future career tracks available, there are there are many possibilities. We are also living in a context where people, the young generation, are also developing, they are also carving out their own future trajectories by bringing together the variety of skills, their own personal experience, the languages that they know, the context in which they grew up. So this broad, this degree gives you basically the foundation in global affairs, international relations, and a much more grounded understanding of Eurasia, a very broad, transforming region, and also gives and opens up your horizon and gives you skills and knowledge that is necessary for you to pursue careers and your future path in number of areas depending on your own personal background, your own personal preferences, the skill sets that you have acquired.
Thank you. Thank you so much, dear Bhavna. So, and I have one last question. What advice would you give to prospective students of this program?
I don't like giving advice to people, but because everyone learns through their own experience, through experimentation, through mistakes, through trying so many different options. So yeah, so if the advice, if I may give to people, is um, to learn as much as possible about the current world, which is changing very fast, but also be aware of a much broader context. So rather than getting bogged down in details, try to understand the underlying concepts and ideas and the ontology, philosophy, values embedded in this. Learn new things. Also, stay focused. Don't just go in any direction. There are plenty of distractions available today, but learn through your own personal engagement and not by looking in at some kind of ready-made answers. So if you are curious, if you remain focused, if you are inquisitive, and you dedicate to working in one specific area, uh, then you you will be able to go further, and new options and paths will open to you. So basically, be curious, also be grounded, be focused, and some degree of dedication and clarity, rather than being overwhelmed by so many different things which are happening in today's world.
Thank you. Thank you so much, dear Bhavna. So, dear viewers, if you have your questions to our representatives of the School of Science and Humanities and SOAS University in London, you can ask that on our chat box. And I think that we, for now, we don't have any questions, but anyways, I have to mention that one more time, this is 1 year program, and if we talk about the application process, you have to apply through first of all through the Source University portal website, and and also the Source University, they will consider all your requirements in order to apply for this program. So you should meet all the necessary minimum requirements for this program. And this program is only for tuition fees. So we are not providing any scholarships for this program. This is the very important information. And we are going to start this program in this current academic year, 2026, 2027. So starting from the August. So we're going to have our academic year from the middle of the August, and this program will start. Thank you so much. And let me check one more time. Yes, we have some questions. Okay, let me read the first one. Hello, everyone. I have applied several times to pursue a master degree at Nazarbayev University, but unfortunately, I was successful. I think maybe okay. Currently, I am studying for my master degree in state audit in Alan Gumilov Eurasian National University. I have always dreamed of studying at Nazarbayev University, and now I am planning to apply for a PhD doctoral program. My field is audit, government, and the public sector. Could you please advise me on which program would you be most suitable and how I can prepare to improve my chance of being accepted? Okay, I see. So I think that the applicant, maybe not applicant, but the viewer, he's asking, our guest is asking about the PhD programs. And can, for example, if you already have master degree program, can they also study on the degree program of global affairs?
Yes, 100%. All students are welcome, even if you have. It's not uncommon today for people to have multiple master degrees if that's needed for the career track. So if you feel that you're curious about the topics that we mentioned already earlier in our discussion about global affairs and Eurasian studies, you're more than welcome to apply to this program, and hopefully they will be you'll be successful this time in your applications at Nazarbayev University, and we are looking forward to reviewing your application.
Yeah. So, and of course, you can apply in any of our doctoral programs that we have. We have School of Science and Humanities that also provide the doctoral programs. If we talk about the PhD program, right, we also have the graduate schools, so that provides our PhD programs like Graduate School of Education and the Graduate School of Public Policy. So today we have a speaker who is going to introduce the Graduate School of Public Policy, the new major public management, Doctor of Public Management. And today we have the representative of Graduate School of Business who will speak and represent our new program, DBA, Doctor of Business. So please stay with us and you will get more information about our new doctoral programs. So, and just a second, I will check with the next questions. So I think that we have general questions about the scholarships, PhD, and so engineering management, economics, and so on. And dear viewers, please, you can still put your questions. I will cover these questions during our sessions. And if you don't have any questions to our representatives regarding the global affairs and the Eurasian Studies program, so I would like to thank all of you and of course our representatives, our assistant professor of the School of Science and Humanities, Maya Savevska, and thank you so much, dear Bafna Dave, representative and the lecturer of the politics of Eurasian Studies in South University, in Central Asia of South University in London. Dear Bafna, thank you for joining us. Thank you, dear speakers, for now we are continue with the video about the campus, and after that you will meet our another speaker, representative of the Graduate School of Business. So stay with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Yeah. Hi everyone. Now we have another speaker. Thank you for staying with us. So now we have the assistant professor representative of the Graduate School of Business of Nazarbayev University, Tom Vinemont. Right. So first of all, I would like to introduce you. So tell you that we're going to present our new programs. Just I mentioned, we had already our guest of the representatives of the our School of Science and Humanities and the Social University in London, and now we're continuing with our Graduate School of Business. So today we are representing our new programs. We are introducing you the new programs, and now we are going to introduce you the next program of the business. Bachelor of Business Administration of the joint program with HKUST, the Hong Kong University of Science and Technologies. So, and after that, we are going to present you the Doctor of Business Administration, the new program. So, hi, Tom. Would you like to shortly introduce yourself and your role in the Graduate School of Business?
Sure, thank you. Hi, my name is Tom Vinemont. I've been here at Nazarbayev University since 2019. I'm actually faculty in finance, and I've been running some of the programs at the business school. First, the Master of Finance, and now the BBA, is a Bachelor of Business Administration.
Okay, thank you so much. So, dear Tom, could you please introduce the BBA in Eurasian Studies program and its.
All right. So the BBA in Eurasian Business, we call it EABU, and some of the locals call it EABU. So there's a EABU effect. The title says it's this is a focus on Eurasia. Eurasia is that landmass that starts in Portugal and goes all the way to Japan. And so the idea is to have a bit of an international focus. So we're targeting students who are interested in the local context, but also try to find out how to do business internationally. And as Kazakhstan is right in the heart of Eurasia, and Hong Kong has been also a bridge between different worlds. Eurasian business is the main focus.
Okay. And what makes the program particularly relevant in today's global economy?
Right. So Eurasian business, if we think about the history before, many developing places tried to do business with the United States. That was the main focus. Or they tried to do business with Europe. And now geopolitically, there's a lot of uncertainty happening. And we see that a lot of the neighbors from Kazakhstan are actually looking at Kazakhstan to do business with Kazakhstani entrepreneurs, and so there is a lot of potential in thinking about new linkages, new liaisons between entrepreneurs in different areas of companies in different regions of in this area. So that's the politically, I think that it's the main change since the past. Also, if we're thinking about Kazakhstan, as Kazakhstan, as I said, is kind of centered at the heart of Eurasia, Kazakhstan can also, or people graduating here can also start thinking about being a bridge between all these different worlds. So for that, you need to have a slightly different education, one where we're building on experiences that are not just local, but also global. And that's the idea of this program, is that we work with our partner university, and we bring that mobility right to the program from the start.
Okay, thank you.
So there's a couple of other things that make it really relevant. That is that if we're thinking about the Chinese neighbor, the Chinese neighbor also has is starting to shift focus. So they're looking at new markets, and then the Central Asian market is one of the big focuses. And we're not just talking about Kazakhstan. I'm thinking also Uzbekistan is a large population. They're thinking about how can we set up this. So that's the main part.
Okay. And the next question is, how does the collaboration with HQC enhance this academic experience?
Okay. So that's a very good question, and we're very proud about this collaboration that we have at Hong Kong UST. So for people who are not aware of the status that Hong Kong UST has, it is a school that has a bit of a history like Nazarbayev University. They were set up with the idea of immediately reaching a high level, and they worked also with international partners to reach that. So they are now, if we're looking at the university, Hong Kong UST itself, they're ranked at in the Time Higher Education ranking. They're ranked at number 66.
Okay.
And they have, the business school is actually ranked even higher in certain areas. So if you look, Bloomberg has which is a financial provider of data, has also ranking, and the business school ranks actually at number 1 in Asia. So also in terms of sustainability, also employability, they're actually very high ranking. So the collaboration, and as you know, NU is also a high-ranked university. The business school also is, if you're looking at UT Dallas ranking in terms of research output, we're actually number 1 in Eurasia and the Caucasus. So we want to partner that can match, and we found that through Hong Kong UST. So one of the advantages is that both universities are kind of international universities. So if you're thinking about NU, the idea here is to get international education at home. The Hong Kong universities have a little bit of the same idea. They started off also with attracting international and building up programs that you could get some in the United States, for instance. So it's a good partnership, and we worked hard on this program. Actually, worked for 2 or 3 years in setting this up. But I think we have a lot of synergy gains, and we're very much looking forward to the first cohort arriving.
Sure. Thank you so much that you have mentioned about our ranking. So of course, I also want to mention to our viewers, for new viewers who just joined us. So for now, today we're speaking about the new programs, and now we're speaking about the Bachelor of Business Administration joint program with Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. And I want to mention that 2 years, according to this program, the students they study at Nazarbayev University, and 2 years at Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and after that they get dual degree diploma, right? So, and thank you for mentioning that we are also the HQC in the ranking of Times Higher Education, and also Nazarbayev University. And according to the Times Higher Education, we are in top 400, number 1 in Caucasus and Central Asia, and number 4 in the CIS countries. So, and my following question is connected with the courses. So, what are some key courses or areas that for students will explore on this program?
Right. So, as you said, this program is for 2 years. Students will be studying at Nazarbayev University, and for 2 years afterwards they can go to Hong Kong UST. And then afterwards is actually there's also an opportunity to work in Hong Kong. There will be you get actually work permit when you graduate through the entire 4-year program. So both universities have their own programs already with core components. So what we're doing is we're building here the foundation in Nazarbayev University. So the program is slightly different from our regular BBA program. So we have a BBA program now with 2 streams. One is in finance and data analytics. Another one is in innovation and entrepreneurship. Students in the BBA EABU, they can choose a couple of the advanced courses that we're offering to these programs. But the first 2 are the courses that are mainly taken here are the business core. And then there are some Eurasian business major requirements that also have been taken here. So I also want to point out that we have a language component in the program. So obviously the program is in English everywhere.
Okay.
But for students, when they are studying in Kazakhstan, there is the Kazakh language, which is great for our program, because we are actually envisioning here a cohort with not just like Hong Kong students or Kazakh students, but we're recruiting globally.
Yeah.
So the cohort will have a much more international character than we would have in the regular BBA programs. And so in that sense, if we're thinking about the courses will be the business core. We'll have microeconomics, macroeconomics. There's an introduction to business. There's a course in finance and accounting. And then we go to more real kind of core business related subjects, such as and at NU we'll take management and organizations. There's going to be a marketing course. I probably forget something, but then at Hong Kong UST there will be innovation and entrepreneurship and very specific leadership courses, but then on the Eurasian context. So at Hong Kong UST, there are some specialized courses that they use because they have a lot of experience working with international students who come from different parts of Asia. So our BBA EABU intake will also be able to take these courses.
So do they need to study Chinese language just in Hong
Yes,
Kong?
yes. So there are three language components really. One is that we have English as the language of instruction, and then here Kazakh, but we also allow for the possibility to learn Russian for the students who come from abroad, because in many places it's still kind of a business language.
So they can optionally choose the language, Kazakh or Russian.
And then, well, there's always Kazakh. So I think that's important to have that in this program. And then in Hong Kong, there is a compulsory component that is Chinese.
Okay. So, and I have one more question regarding the application. So how can students apply program? You have mentioned that not only students from Kazakhstan or Hong Kong can apply to this program, and how do the admission requirements are different from other NU programs?
Yes, that's a very good question, because we're really looking here at the international setup. So the admissions criteria are set up jointly with Hong Kong UST. So they are a little bit the requirements are a little bit higher than what the NU regular requirements are for admissions to bachelor programs. We do allow for a range of SAT. So there are SAT, there's ACT, there's also IB. I'm going to refer to our website and also to our admissions for the specifics, but it's a general thing. Of course, we need to have an IELTS, so because instruction is in English, and then we expect either IB or SAT, or also the local tests are also valid.
So as I know that all the students except China, they have to apply through our portal of NU. So we have our portal admissions.nu.edu.kz. Usually all the applicants, they apply through this personal accounts. They fulfill the application form and upload all the necessary documents, including the IELTS test results or TOEFL language test. And also, I have to mention, if we have the viewers from China, the citizens of China, they have to apply through the HKUST University portal, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, this is kind of the difference. This is the main difference for the citizens of China. But for other citizens, you have to apply through the Nazarbayev University portal. as I mentioned, admissions portal. So, and regarding the requirements, we still have on our website, you can see all the information about the requirements. We have the IELTS TOEFL minimum 6.0, and you can choose, any of the categories that we have. So we have different categories.
UNT, SAP, IB.
Yeah, for tuition fees you can apply, and also what about the transcript of school diploma? Whether the admissions committee they consider this or not?
Yeah, so I would say if you're thinking about applying, definitely contact our admissions group, because we have at the Graduate School of Business we have an admissions team that is specifically working on the BBA and also these BBA EABU program, and they can provide this information in much more detail than I can.
Of course. Thank you so much, dear Tom. And now we're switching on to the next program that we are going to present you. So the DBA program, Doctor of Business Administration, and we have for now the application is open for this program, right. So you can apply on our through our portal admissions. You can also apply to the HQST BBA program of the Eurasian Business Program. Okay, now about the DBA. So, dear Tom, what is the main goal of the Doctor of Business Administration?
Okay, so the DBA, or the Doctor of Business Administration program, is a brand new program that we're launching. It is very popular these days in certain parts of the world. It's not everywhere, but for instance, Singapore, Hong Kong, also the UK. Are launching a lot of DBA programs. So this is a Doctor of Business Administration program. It is a program at the higher end of the programs that we're offering. And so the idea is that somebody who has been working for a while, already did a master's program before in business, can actually go a level higher. So we're looking for a very specific clientele for this, which are people who are fascinated by academia. They wanna study certain aspects of business, and they typically want to do that within their own experience and environment. So they have been working in business, and maybe an entrepreneur. They have developed their business, and they're facing certain problems within their business, and then that DBA is going to help them in trying to structure this and have a theoretical framework around it, and then coming with solutions. So the end title of the DBA is just so people can then call themselves a doctor, and it sounds similar to other programs that we're offering, which is you're going to probably ask this question, which are the PhD programs. So it's part of the same level of program we're offering. It's just a different focus.
So yes, as you already mentioned, in the Graduate School of Business, we have other programs. We have BBA, we have MBA, Master of Business Administration, we have Executive MBA, and now we are starting the new program, DBA, Doctor of Business Administration. And my following question is, who is the ideal candidate for this program? Is it suitable for working professionals and executives, or executives? I don't know. How do you think?
Yeah. So just to distinguish a little bit with the PhD, because I think there's a lot of confusion that happens. Is like, what is now different between a DBA and a PhD? So a PhD is really about academic research, and the idea there is that somebody will become an academic. So to teach at university, typically you need a PhD. A DBA has a different focus, so it's not pure academic. It really has an applied nature, and it is based on professionals. So we're looking at the different public here. So for a PhD, typically we look at somebody who's just finished a master's program and immediately says, my career goal is to become an academic.
Yeah.
A DBA candidate is somebody who has working experience. So as a fresh graduate from a master program, unless you have work experience before, there you would more think about PhD, but DBA is really somebody who's like a CEO or is aspiring to become a CEO and has been working in an environment and then uses this to kind of like bring up the level of the organization that they either founded or are working in, and then also can communicate this new theoretical framework or practical framework with the people who are working in the organization. Yeah. So an ideal candidate, I would say, is this goes to the admissions criteria as well. Is somebody who has at least 5 years working experience managing people in a leadership position. That's and has worked in understands an organization really well.
Thank you so much. Very informative. And what kind of research do DBA students typically work on?
Yeah, so business school, we have different streams, or we don't call them departments, but areas of specialization, let's say. So for DBA, again, because this is really a link with the organization, it kind of matches that this differentiation. So it could be somebody who's working on management, on how to deal with all these employees and organize them so they're most productive. It could be on marketing, could be on operations, could also be on digitalization. So there's going to be topics that are current, that are asking for corporations to change their way of thinking. So whatever this person is actually experienced in can be a topic for the dissertation in the DBA. So you're going to see often that people have, for instance, have worked in operations. You're going to say, hey, we're doing really great, but we have a couple of problems, and these problems will be solved during the DBA. So in a way, you can think of it as the student really leveling up, plus also getting some consulting at the from doing the DBA, and that's kind of the path.
So interesting. You have mentioned that actually those who would like to become the CEOs, they can consider this program. And the next question about the structured balance, also about the study and professional life. Do they have opportunity to work and study at the same time? Could you please?
You don't mention family life, so I mean, but you're right. So the
also,
CEOs are already very busy, or aspiring to be a CEO is very busy. So that's another distinction between a PhD and a DBA. With the DBA, we realize that people are working. This is part of the kind of conditions, at least the prior work experience. So the courses are organized in the short stretches where people are on campus, and then they are in a short period of time, very concentrated on doing these courses. And then there's the opportunity to interact with the professors who are teaching these programs in an online format together with the classmates. So we're following a little bit what we also do with our executive MBA program, where what we call the students come on in residence. So they're then here for a weekend. But so for the DBA, we're thinking about like people come for 2 weekends with a week in between in residence. And then there is, they get some tasks, and then there is an interaction with that. So it's a perfect way. We're very aware that when you're working, there is limited time. We're very aware of that. It's a strong program. It's a almost full-time program, but it's organized in such a way that it's possible for professionals to attend the courses.
So Thank you. And my last question about the requirements. So, as I know, the key admission requirements should be the same, like to when the applicant or the candidate they consider the PhD program. So, as I know, they have to. Do they have to, for example, take part in the competition for scholarships, or do this program provide scholarships, or it's only for tuition fees?
So for the DBA program, there are no scholarships.
No scholarships, only for tuition fee basis, right?
Yes. So
Okay.
this is we have also the tradition in the business school, and that goes across most of our programs that we there are some scholarships for like master in finance program, but they're actually external scholarships mostly.
Okay.
So for the DBA program, is a program that I presume could be sponsored by the entrepreneur themselves or by a company.
By company.
So
Okay.
it's a great program to kind of like reach out to human resources and say, hey, you want if you want, I can make our organization better. But the requirements are a minimum level of English because the program will be in English, contrary to our EMBA program that is in English but with Russian translation. This program will be in English. The other requirements are this minimum 5-year work experience, work experience in a management position.
Okay.
And then there is also some minimal requirements on, for instance, you have to have a master program before you apply for the DBA, because it's kind of the next level of degrees. There's a minimum GPA there, but it's very much reachable.
So it can be any master's program, not MBA, but if they don't have the MBA, they can still apply.
Sure. It's a master degree is a must. It doesn't have to be in business.
Okay.
It's more that we were expecting people to apply because they have been in management, but it could be that somebody from an engineering background did a master's in that area and then now decides to go to DBA. That's fine.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, dear professor. So, dear viewers, thank you for staying with us. Thank you for those who already joined us, also who is joining us still. So, and I want to mention one more time that today we are presenting introducing the 2 programs of Nazarbayev University, and you can apply. The application is open for these new programs. So now we had the assistant professor of the Graduate School of Business, Professor Tom Benaimon. Thank you so much, dear professor. And I think that we have some questions from the audience. Let me just read the questions. Okay. Hello, my name is Francis Fosu Frimpong from Ghana. I applied for a master's degree at Nazarbayev University about 3 years ago, but I wasn't successful. I've acquired MSc Corporate Governance and Strategic Leadership. I wish to apply for a doctor program. Kindly help me with the options available. Thank you. So one of the options is Doctor of Business Administration, and today we are also going to present another doctoral program, Doctor of Public Management. We are going to have our next speaker. So, and please, you can still put your questions, the general questions. I will answer your questions at the end of this today's online info session. So thank you so much, dear professor. So, and someone asked already about whether the DBA program provides scholarships or not. As our professor mentioned, it's not providing. It's only for tuition fee basis, and you can apply.
There is one more thing I want to say about the DBA is that we also have an international component to it, which will be with the top university. So there is also the possibility to reach out internationally.
Great, thank you.
So I hope to see some applications. Thank you.
Yes, we will hope also. Thank you so much. So now we are going to have our video. Yeah, thank you.
In the heart of Eurasia, Nazarbayev University is a symbol of academic excellence. This is a university built with purpose, a center of knowledge and innovation, where world-class teaching and research define the future of our region and beyond. Our students stand among the brightest of their generation. Guided by distinguished faculty, they demonstrate the ambition and ability to compete at the level of the world's most respected universities. Life at NU is always dynamic, with more than 120 student societies, from cultural and artistic clubs to sports, debate, and volunteering initiatives. Students help shape the university through leadership roles and decision-making opportunities. At NU, every student can find their place to belong and to lead. Our research is purposeful. Focused on 5 strategic areas, it advances global knowledge while addressing the needs of Central Asia. From artificial intelligence to healthcare, sustainability to energy, this is a university that creates solutions. The impact of Nazarbayev University is tangible. Thousands of alumni now shape economies, business, and governance worldwide. Our School of Medicine unites teaching, research, and clinical practice, pioneering surgical innovation and global healthcare models. The university's influence reaches far beyond campus. Nazarbayev University is not only advancing knowledge, it is redefining higher education, transforming the way universities serve society. Here, ambition meets opportunity. Nazarbayev University, advancing Central Asia, preparing leaders for the world.
Okay, hi everyone, one more time. Thank you for staying with us. Thank you for joining us. And now we have our next speaker, the Dean of the Graduate School of Public Policy, Ricardo Pelizzo. Thank you, Ricardo, for joining us, for coming and representing the new program. So now we are going to represent you the new program, Doctor of Public Management program. So thank you so much. Would you like to tell anything about yourself and your role?
Well, my name is Ricardo Pelizzo. I'm the Dean of the Graduate School of Public Policy. I was appointed last week after serving as a Vice Dean.
By the way.
As a Vice Dean and Acting Dean. So now I'm officially the Dean. We designed this program because we believe that, Kazakhstan is in the process of transformation, public sector reform. The government understands the importance of designing better policy to do a better job implementing policy. And even the recent reforms, the constitutional reforms that were approved last month are part of this strategy to improve the quality of government and governance in Kazakhstan. One of the views that we at the School of Public Policy is that in addition to designing good institutions and good procedures and processes, it's important to have well-trained government officials and leaders. This doctorate in public management is designed to actually provide the kind of training. So it's different from the other programs. We used to have 3 programs, a master in public policy, a master in public administration, and a PhD, which is designed for those who want to become university professors like me. But if you are a leader in a public sector and you want to learn something from international experiences, you want to upgrade your skills, you want to learn something that you didn't know before, and get information about what's happening around the world, I think this program is to you. And that's why, unlike the PhD, this is a program that runs in 3 years. The first year is course-based. You come in, you learn, you take courses in, broadly speaking, research method, economics, public policy, public administration. In the second semester, you get, in addition to some of these courses, you take a course in which you write your dissertation proposal, which is not a pure piece of research. That's a key difference with the PhD. PhD, pure research, designed to produce a publication for prestigious academic journals. This is not the point. This is the point for people who have experience in the public sector in a position of leadership to actually reflect and understand how certain issues that are relevant for them in their job can be addressed and fixed.
Okay, thank you. And who is the program designed for? Is it relevant for both government and non-government professionals?
I think that there's three broad markets. I think it is important for, obviously, for anybody working in the government or in the public sector, broadly speaking. I think it's very relevant for those who work in international organizations, because they also sometimes need to improve their credentials to get their promotion and to have a better career. And so that's is a program that is very, very useful for them. And I think for all those people that work in the private sector in government relation, this degree is really designed for them, because they will be able to relate in a better way with government, because because the public administration and public management courses we offer.
And what are the main areas of study in this program, within this program?
Okay, well, obviously there are some components that are designed to teach students to do how to do a research. So, for example, courses like a research design that is designed to teach you how to go about doing a rigorous piece of research. There are some also methodological courses like statistics, where you learn how to get the data and analyze them in a proficient kind of way. I think we have a fabulous course, which is program evaluation, which is I think we are really one of the few school and universities in Central Asia that offers this kind of courses. That's crucial, because one of the problems that I think policymakers often have is that we design a good policy and we implement. Did it work? And this evaluation course teaches you how to assess that. So these are, broadly speaking, the methodologically inclined or focused courses that we have in our curriculum. We have a course on economic applications. For the PhD, we teach both macroeconomics. We didn't think that this course will require that much emphasis on economics, because this is a program that is designed for people who are already advanced in their career and actually want to focus more on public administration and management and leadership. And therefore, that's why there's a big component of the program that has courses on policy analysis, public administration, and so on and so on. So that's, broadly speaking, these are the three areas around which this program is designed.
Okay, thank you. And so how does the program develop the leadership, and policy-making skills from the students?
Oh, okay. The second part of the question is more straightforward. They will have to reflect on their professional experience. You're a policymaker, there's a problem in the country, whatever that might be. Your superior, the minister, the president, the prime minister may ask you to do something about it. What kind of thinking did you do? In what other way the problem could have been addressed, and what different solution could have been proposed? And how do you adjudicate between a competing policy option to adopt the one that is going to work, hopefully, the best? So that's what we do. In terms of leadership, well, when you come to our program, it's not just it's not a passive learning kind of program where some of us, including myself, go to class and lecture, and students listen for 3 hours without falling asleep most of the time. It's going to be also an exercise in persuading, in teaching, in showcasing, in learning by doing, and so that will really sharpen leadership skills of our prospective students, because as a leader, you need to have a great idea. You need to be able also to communicate it in a very efficient kind of way, and by doing the kind of exercises that we expect our students to do, so written assignments in the first year and presentations in the classes and in class discussions, you actually practice that presentation skills very, very much. And you also will learn how to persuade people, because if you say, I have this problem, I thought this could be a solution, and people in the class think, no, we don't think this is very convincing, you practice some soft skills that are for me, the most important that someone in the public sector should have. Because, you know, designing great policies that you're not able to communicate does not lead to a great success. You know, what makes a policy successful, I've said it, I say it all the time, you know, design a good policy is great, but in the end, what ensures the success of a policy is policy compliance. You want the people to say, oh, that was really a good idea. We are going to do it. We're going to do what the government wants us to do. And so to make sure that the people understand the importance of the policy, you need to be very good at policy communication. Sometimes a policy fails, not because it was designed in a bad manner, because it was poorly designed. It fails because the importance of the policy was not communicated properly. So I think, you know, these kind of programs goes a long way to actually enhance policymakers' ability to communicate fluently and successfully.
And how the program is, I mean, structured? Do the students will have opportunity to work, or I mean, to have this kind of balance between work and study?
Okay, now the first year, in the first year is going to be challenging, because in the first year they will take 4 courses the first semester and 4 courses in the second semester. So the first year, I mean, if they're very good at management, time management, they may be able to do it. But I think it's gonna be very challenging because even thinking that they can work, we schedule the classes in the evening and they study, they work the whole day and they come to class at night, is gonna make it very difficult for them to do all the things that they're expected to do. But then in the second and the third year, they will be focusing exclusively on their dissertation. And so, you know, so they will meet regularly with their supervisor. They will show to their supervisor the progress that they're making on their thesis. I collected the data, analyzed the data. This is what I find. What do you think? Is it put together properly? How can I improve? But that's not going to be incompatible with resuming their work obligations. So I think that after the first year, that's very much possible.
You have mentioned that the ideal candidate can be those applicants or candidates who already work in public sector, in governance sector. But if they are not working or they don't have any opportunity, I mean, for example, they are specifically changing their majors, can they apply to the Doctor of Public Management, or it will be considered that they should specifically have the experience in public sector, like working professionals?
Okay, so they need to have work experience. This is not a program for juniors, for junior aspiring academics. You know, we in the Master of Public Policy, we admit students almost straight out of the bachelor, no problem. You know, can we accept students in the PhD straight out of the master? Sure, no problem. If a young bright girl or a young bright man wants to study a PhD because they want to pursue a career in academia, there's no problem. But here it's a program that is really designed for more senior students, in the sense that what is going to make the class discussions very rich is that they will bring their many years of experience in the private or in the public sector, because, you know, we don't discriminate private sector experience at all. That's just as important. But what is important for us is that they need to have an experience, so that, you know, we can see, because if you don't have the experience, you know, when you start a career, I mean, even as a professor, you start and you start doing what? Well, you come to a university, you start doing a lot of research, you go to class, you teach, you do, which is very important, but you don't have many managerial duties, because you need to prove yourself that you are good at doing what a professor is supposed to do, which is teaching and doing research. But it's only after you become more senior, you become an associate professor, a full professor, or whatever, that your administrative responsibility become wider, because people know that you have those managerial skills, because you understand how the system, the organization works. Same thing for the public sector or for the private sector. You know, the experience that a CEO or a general director of a ministry or a vice minister have is completely different from someone that finished the master in public administration in GSPP last year and is now working at the entry-level job in the public sector. That does not prevent people who have just entered the public sector, the private sector, from applying to our MPA program a few years down the line. But some experience is crucial because, you know, the focus is really for experienced people who want to, they need to have the experience to, because in a way they need to reflect on it. And if they don't have it, what they reflect about. You see, so that's the key difference, I will say, but one of the key differences between our doctorate in public management and our PhD.
Okay. And how many years of working experience they should have?
I will say about 8.
About
5 we consider, but better 8 because we want them really to be, you know, I mean, and if you think about it, this is not absolutely unconceivable because you finish a bachelor when you're 21 and 8-year experience means that you're 30, 31. So you're still very young, very energetic, you know, very driven, really ambitious. And so, you know, you're still young, you just come here. And it's actually, and I think the real beauty of this program is that you get your degree in 3 years. So it's a very efficient kind of experience.
And can you please give the information about the scholarships? This program is not providing the scholarships.
That's correct.
Yes,
That's
about
correct.
the tuition fees.
So this program does not provide scholarship. It is a program that we are allowed to run only for students that are fee paying, which means that either the students pay their own tuition or they can have their own employers or their own organization to sponsor them. That's absolutely fine. The key point is that for prospective applicants, for prospective students who are currently working in the public sector, you know, they will only be charged half the tuition price. So it's, I think, a very reasonable value for money that we are offering. And you know, and I say so because I like to remind everybody, we are by far the best public policy school in the country and in the region. And so I don't think anybody could receive the kind of quality education that we provide for a similar cost anywhere in the region. And if you go to university that are just as good as us outside the region, the cost will be fantastically higher.
Thank you so much, dear Professor Pilizzo. So, dear guests, dear viewers, I want to remind you that today with us was the Dean of the Graduate School of Public Policy, Professor Riccardo Pilizzo. And let me switch on to the questions.
Right.
I will ask you. Okay. So we have general questions about MSc. But we're getting there. So. So I think that we don't have specific question for you because we have, just a second. Okay, just one question. If a student later wants to apply for PhD, but the same like doctoral programs, I think, does the program provide sufficient research training and academic preparation for PhD and doctoral programs?
Well, I mean, of course, you know, once, if you complete this degree, if you apply for our DPM, you will get the same quality education that we provide in any of our other programs because, you know, we are known for the quality of our research and we are known for the quality of the teaching. So, you know, it doesn't matter if you're applying MPP, MPA, PhD, DPM, the quality of teaching is very good. Obviously, you know, once you complete the DPM, which is something that makes sense for professionals, for practitioners, for public sector, private sectors, international organizations, employees, or, you know, if you then decide that you want to go and pursue a PhD because you want to become a university professor, you can certainly do that. And I'm absolutely certain that many of the courses that you have taken for completing this DPM will be discounted, so you will not have to take them away. So, in a way, for people who have gone through the DPM, even the PhD at a later stage becomes a very, very quick program, because you're only left with 3-4 courses to take, then you go into the dissertation, and so it's a very quick experience. So, it makes actually a lot of sense. But only if you later on you want to become an academic. That's because that's what the PhD is designed to do.
Okay. Thank you so much, dear professor. Thank you, dear viewers. Please stay with us. I will try to cover all your questions that you have in your chat box. So now we are going to switch on the next video. Thank you.
All right. I'm good.
Just a second.
Welcome to Nazarbayev University, located here in Astana. The huge campus has all the opportunities and services for you to live, study, grow personally and professionally. Right now, we are on the main entrance of the university with the stunning architecture. Now, let me take you to a campus tour to see what awaits you here at NU. As we enter the atrium, you will feel the energy right away. Bright, spacious, and always full of life. The green spaces were made for a new community to relax in between classes. From the atrium, students can go to lectures to their schools: the School of Sciences and Humanities, School of Engineering and Digital Sciences, and the School of Mining and Geosciences. The library is also right here. Just few steps above is the upper atrium. From here you can go to research and graduate blocks. Also, you can use skywalks to go to the dormitory. No need to go outside. Throughout the campus, you will notice many common spaces. Comfortable seating zones surrounded by greenery invite students to pause, recharge, or brainstorm together. You could see students or staff chatting over a coffee and catching up between lectures. These areas are designed to balance academic rigor with a sense of community and relaxation. The campus offers large event and classroom spaces. The main hall, a stage for concerts, international conferences, and the graduation ceremonies. The blue hall and orange hall, the halls for lectures to accommodate more than 100 students. And the elegant ballrooms, the halls for celebration and cultural evenings that bring the NU community and visitors together. Step outside and a new landscape opens up. The unique pyramids host the creative art hub dedicated for arts, science, and technology, called Energy. Japanese rock garden. This is a precise compositional reference to the garden located in Kyoto. There are 15 stones here, but the observer can see only 14 from any angle. This is also a center for Eastern cultures and part of Energy. At the amphitheater, students hold concerts, various performances, and open-air celebrations. The pond is the shape of a new logo, a place to spend some time outdoors or simply enjoy the views. The campus of Nazarbayev University is a home for thousands of international and local students and faculty. It was made for everyone to feel safe, supported, and inspired. Shaping the future, this is a campus built for scientific innovations, growth, and inspiration. NU is where your future begins, and we look forward to welcoming you here soon.
Hi, dear viewers. One more time, thank you for staying with us. So I would like to tell you shortly, today we have introduced our new programs. We had our representatives of the School of Science and Humanities and the SOAS University in London, who provided us and gave us the information about the joint program with Nazarbayev University. The joint program is by SOAS University in London for the MA program, master's program in the Global Affairs and Eurasian Studies. Also, today we had the assistant professor from the Graduate School of Business who introduced us the program of the Hong Kong University of Science and Technologies joint program with Nazarbayev University, and he also introduced us the Doctor of Business Administration, and we had finally the Dean of the Graduate School of Public Policy of Nazarbayev University, who introduced us the new program Doctor of Public Management. And today we have covered some questions, but we still have some questions from you that I'm going to cover. So let me start. Yeah, the first question is just. Dear professors and program initiators, could you clarify the exact award structure of the program? Will graduates receive one joint degree or separate award documents? And how will the institution names appear in the diploma and transcript? For students who plan to use these qualifications in China or internationally, how should the degree be most accurately presented in credential evaluation and employer screening context? As I understand, this question is about the Hong Kong University of Science and Technologies joint program, so BBA program. So the BBA in Eurasian business, when the students have opportunity to study they study 2 years at Nazarbayev University, 2 years at Hong Kong University of Science and Technologies in Hong Kong, China. So after that, they get the dual degree diploma, and the dual degree diploma means that it will be written that it's a dual diploma of 2 universities. It will be mentioned that the student, the alumni have graduated 2 universities that have provided one joint program, and it will be written in the transcript and in the final diploma. So, and this is that I wanted to mention also. All the programs that we have presented to you and introduced to you are for tuition fees, for tuition fee basis. They are not providing the scholarships, and you have to know that you can apply for this and to meet the minimum entry requirements. The next question is, good afternoon. Thank you for organizing the session. How much time is allocated to discussing each program? So we have finished for this time. So we discussed about 15 or 20 minutes for about each program. Hopefully everything was very informative for you. So, and you enjoyed today online session. And the next question is, hello everyone, my name is Hajar. I'm one of the Afghan girls. Very nice to meet you. I have a question regarding online certificates. My question is general and related to Kazakhstan scholarships. As you may know, Kazakhstan scholarships have been announced and I'm very interested in applying. However, my main concern is whether online certificates are accepted by universities in Kazakhstan or not. I really do not want to miss the opportunity. I would greatly appreciate your guidance on this matter. Thank you very much. Okay, the question about the scholarship. Actually, the deadlines for the scholarship is already closed. So, and for all programs, however, you can still apply. Our applicants, they can still apply on tuition fee basis to Nazarbayev University. If you consider the scholarship, you have to apply for the next academic year to any of our programs. Actually, the application dates usually starts on the end of September. So from the end of September, you can apply to our foundation and undergraduate programs. From the middle of October or from the beginning of October, you can apply to our master's degrees programs for the scholarships, and also the PhD programs. Actually, application scholarships will start on November. So please, you can read all the details on our website, the deadline details for the next and the current academic year. Thank you. And the next question. I have graduated from an online school and I have online diploma. So if I apply for Kazakhstan scholarship, would they accept me? So it depends on the degree again. Have you received the degree, not the certificate, or what does the mean the online diploma? For example, you should have the appropriate, for example, bachelor degree. If you apply to the master's program, you should, if you have your transcript, officially your diploma and official recognized degree, you can apply to our programs because these are the main requirements. The next question. I have several questions. Okay. The first one. Would you describe the program as more technical management oriented or more business management oriented? Okay. I think that this question is about the Hong Kong HQC program. Yes. Actually, the description, all the course details, you can find on our website of the also graduate school of business can provide the details of HQST program, and you can also see the details on the Hong Kong University of Science and Technologies, because as our professor of the assistant professor of the graduate school of business mentioned, this is like more business management oriented, because this is the business like in business Eurasian administration program. So the next one. Are capstone projects typically industry-based with real companies, or are they more academic in nature? So this is typically, as I understand, it's more industry-based because they can work. And as our professor mentioned, this is if we talk about, I think that. So we have to know which kind of program are you talking about. If we talk about the Doctor of Business Administration, as our professor mentioned, it's like more project, like industry based, and they can have experience in working in real companies, and these are like some that is what is different from typical PhD programs, what make the difference between DBA and PhD programs. So the next question is these are the if a student later wants to apply for PhD, does the program provide sufficient research training and academic preparation? Of course, they make not making the typical research in the if we talk about the DBA, but if we talk about the PhD programs, yes, there are like 4 years of study, and they can make the research, and there is the great opportunity for our PhD students to be there, to work like being the array research assistants. At the same time, they making their research and they work on being the research assistant and get money salary for that. So. The next question. I wanted to apply for bachelor in cybersecurity, but a new university didn't have the degree. Can you please clarify? For now, yes, we don't have the cybersecurity. We have the majors in social science and humanities. We have the majors in engineering, AI, computer science. We have majors in like mining, so oil and gas, education, business. And in this case, that's really we don't have the cybersecurity. But you still can see all the majors. We have the schools, different kind of schools, and each school have their own website, and you can follow the website and see all the main majors, and all the majors have their descriptions, course descriptions and curriculums on the websites, their websites. And the next question is, dear professors and program initiate. So I have read this. For students who plan to use this qualification in China or internationally, how should the degree be most accurately presented in credential evaluation and employer screening context? So it's an interesting question. Actually, those students, for example, if you talk about the HQST degree program, they first of all, as our professor mentioned, they have the work permit. They have a choice to stay in Hong Kong and to work to get the work permit and to find the job in the local Hong Kong company, or they can go back and to study here in international companies by having this dual diploma. So and how it can be accurately presented and the credential evaluation, employer screening context. I think that by showing that you already have your this kind of diploma, you already have the great background, because you studied in top universities. It's not only Hong Kong, just not about the Hong Kong allocation, but it's about the top university, Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. As our professor mentioned, that's already in Times Higher Education, 60 plus place of the Times Higher Education. And you have studied in top university, Nazarbayev University, which is also number one in Central Asia and Caucasus, and also number 4 in the CIS countries. So this is already the greatest background that you have, and of course you are going to have the major BBA in Eurasian business program, which is very like globally useful modern program. So the next question. Okay, this is about the degree. So all the programs that we have mentioned, they are not providing the scholarships. Hi, can we ask general questions about NU? I want to apply for MSc. Yes, you can still apply. Let me one more time to repeat that our deadlines for scholarships are already closed, but you can still apply for tuition fees. And if you are an international student and from the country that needs, for example, visa to study in Kazakhstan, the deadline will be until June 1st. You can still apply for tuition fee basis. If you don't need, if you are from the country that for example, doesn't need any visa for the citizens, so you can still have time to apply until July 24th. So, and the next question is, after finishing my BSc, can I stay to apply for masters at Nazarbayev University, or must I leave and reapply for a new visa? Okay, so regarding the application, if you have the bachelor degree, and if you, all the students, if you're considering the master's degree at Nazarbayev University, you should have your appropriate, like it depends on the programs that you're applying. You have to apply through our portal, admissions.nu.edu.kz portal. You are creating your personal account, you're uploading all the necessary documents like CV, and reference letter, of course, your work experience. The work experience requirement depends on the program that you're applying for, and also you have to upload your IELTS and GPA results. The So your GPA should be 2.5 minimum in order to apply to master's programs. And if we talk about the IELTS language test, so if your language of instruction, or for example, of bachelor degree was in English, so you don't need to submit your language test. So you just have to upload the confirmation that your language of instruction was in English. And of course, the last question. My mean was bachelor degree because I have finished my high school and have an online diploma. So if I apply with my online diploma, is it possible that they give me a chance to continue my bachelor's in Kazakhstan? Yes, you can continue your bachelor degree in Kazakhstan. Anyways, you have to upload your school diploma to your personal account, and our admissions team, they will consider everything: your transcript, your diploma, actually the high school diploma. And of course, as I understand that the admissions, the main admissions requirements should be have to graduate the high school.